I find that I've crossed a line in my life to where I know I am not young anymore. And there's multiple things. I hear some of my friends are snickering like, oh, you're still young. I mean, I'll tell you what, sometimes my knees in the morning don't tell me that. There's things that we just realize. Like I caught myself, not joking, like 6 months ago told somebody, I almost used the phrase, when I grow up. And I'm closer to 75 than I am to being one. There's all these little things that we try to hold on to it some ways. You know, I'm pretty technological, so like that's all right. And I kind of always prided myself on that. Like I thought I was 25 until a few years ago, and then learned quickly that I'm not. But I've realized though lately, like I catch myself saying, you know, the kids. I said kids these days once, and I was like, man, I'm getting old. But now the tough thing now, I can keep up with some stuff. But where I get really kind of confused now is like phrases and what things mean. I'll find myself asking somebody what something means. And something that I was really mistaken for several months until I asked when someone said, oh, that's the goat. Or I've seen an acronym, someone says GOAT, like on Facebook or whatever. And I'm like, well, I mean, what does it mean to call something goat? I mean, like they butt heads, they eat everything, they're kind of ornery. It might be those cool fainting goats that you scare and they kind of fall down and get back up. Like I was like, man, people are really interested in goats all of a sudden. I can get behind this. I mean, I've ate a goat before. That was pretty good. And then I asked somebody if like, oh no, it stands for greatest of all time. I'm like, oh, that makes no sense at all. I mean, I guess goats are great. I mean, okay, cool, whatever floats your boat. I mean, fainting goats are pretty cool. So, but think of the greatest things. Think of the greatest things that you have had in your life, the greatest things that you've experienced. When I was 12 years old at like a church, like dinner on the grounds, I won a chip shot contest. I was like the second person to do it, and my first ball went like 10 feet that way. It's supposed to go that way. The second one went behind me, and then the third one was like 4 inches from the marker. And like all day long, like all these grown men who spend a lot of time playing golf, right? They're getting mad the fact that like some kid, like freak of nature, like I still have the trophy at my parents' house from winning this thing. The only kind of golf I'm really good at has the word putt-putt in front of it. And like, that was pretty great. That was just amazing. I think back of when I was younger and I used to spend a lot of time in the outdoors. I think of like watching bald eagles in New Mexico like do their thing. I think it was kind of experiences. I think when I was touring and on the road, I remember waking up one morning outside of the Garden of the Gods at 6:30 in the morning, watching, like literally like getting up and like crawling out of the van and watching the sunrise. Like that was great. I think of the times I've spent in ministry and the places I've gone and the things that I've seen through that, and that those are great. Stuff that I'll remember forever, I'll never forget. Things that help my faith to remain steadfast, stories that I'll gladly tell people, and also stories that I just kind of keep in because this is my special thing. I think of the day that I convinced Meredith to marry me. Like that was one of the greatest things of all time. Like we build these lists of these great things that have happened to us. But what's so interesting, I've thought about this, is, you know, far too often our definition of what makes something great is actually typically only great for us. Like there's this fine line of when something is great, when we will call an experience or an event or something that happens in our life great. There's typically a very thin line between where that is as something that's beneficial to us, but also beneficial towards everyone else. And I think about, I made a list of my great things, and I realized that there's an interesting spot between observing something great happening and participating in something great happening. And that kind of realigns our definition sometimes. And what I realized is that for me, it's when we get this idea in our head of, I can't believe that I get to do this. Think about those times in our life where we've been part of something and that I can't believe I get to do this. And I've told y'all for the last bit that I believe that these last 3 weeks in life for our church are extremely beneficial and fruitful for us and have nothing to do outside of the financial project that we're in, but it's from the spiritual formation side of this. And what I found myself doing really for the last week and a half is waking up in the morning and thinking about just the amazing things that this church is part of and saying, I can't believe I get to do this. And that's happening on a much deeper level than it ever has before across many things. That when we get to be part of something truly great, we realize that we're one part of the puzzle. And so alongside of that, it means asking ourselves the question, what does it mean to see great things? But also, what does it mean to do great things? Are we a people who watch, or are we a people who do? Or are we observing greater things, or then are we causing greater things? The more we kind of peel this onion apart, we see that the deeper it goes, the more layers that come off, the more it goes towards the side of participation. Not being passive in our faith and our life as a church, but being active in our life of faith and our life as a church. And so today we're going to read the passage that our whole 3 weeks have been based off of, and just to think about what does it mean for Jesus to commission us to do greater things. From John 14, verse 12 through 14, this is what it says. I tell you the truth, anyone who has faith in me will do what I have been doing. He will do even greater things than these because I am going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name so the Son may bring glory to the Father. You may ask me for anything in my name and I will do it. The kicker in this whole verse really is at the very end of 12 when he says, because I am going to the Father. We think about what's going on in our life, what's going on in our life with Jesus. And this is the context that Jesus tells us of these greater things. This is the reason that we are filled with the Holy Spirit, that we are asked to go out in mission. The whole reason is because I am going to the Father. That we're not doing this because we're trying to convince him to love us more. We're not doing this to try to earn our way into something. We're not doing this for any other reason, simply the fact that Jesus is saying, I'm going to the Father, and now you will be doing the things that I am doing. So immediately that places us in the center of Jesus' mission here on this earth. What he did for 3 years is carried on by his church for thousands of years afterward. That our mission on this earth is not a concession prize. And this passage is in the context of the disciples being freaked out that Jesus is going somewhere. So they finally realize what's about to happen and they're really, really nervous about it. But this isn't a concession prize. This life with him is not something that we get because he's going away. It's not like when my dad was going away on a trip when I was a kid. He'd be like, well, make sure you take care of the house, son. You're the man of the house. Or there's been sometimes, dog owners, you've done this before. When Meredith and I have left home for a while, we'll leave one of our shirts with Emma at the house. This isn't some concession prize that we give someone to make sure they behave while we're gone. But this is a commission to simply just do the things that Jesus was doing. This is the basic message of the gospel. Where Jesus comes in and says, let me bring you into God's plan and vision for this world. Not as observers, but as participators in this, as participators in something much bigger than you. And when we come into this realization, we come into saying, all right, this is the basic message, then we realize there's all these other things that are part of this. Inside of this, we find salvation. We find the very thing that most of us identify instantly with Jesus. We find our salvation because he's brought us into this bigger relationship. We find our worth. We find value because of this. We find our purpose We find relationships. We find relationships with people. We also find relationships with God because he's brought us into the fold, brought us into all of this. We find fulfillment because he's allowing us and calling and asking us to do things that we just simply can't do on our own. Even greater things. You know, when I read this passage the very first, I heard this 2 years ago and it latched onto my head. And ever since then, I've been trying to figure out what this means and contemplate and think about this. And my first reaction was probably the first reaction that a lot of other people have. It's that, okay, even greater things. That means we'll get to do cool stuff, right? Like Jesus does cool stuff, so we should be able to do cool stuff. Does anybody else think that instantly? I did. I was like, well, okay, I've seen cool stuff happening. Guess this isn't the truth. But this isn't about cool stuff. All throughout the Gospel of John, if you were here with us last summer, we spent 7 weeks on the signs of John and the miracles of John. We realized that every single thing Jesus did that was amazing, that was greater, was simply to just cause belief in the life of people. Jesus did these miracles, or he kind of broke this veil between heaven and earth to simply show people a bigger world. And say, this is what my kingdom is like. This is who my Father is. This is what happens when love invades your space. This is what happens when the divine is willing to press deeply into the reality of the human condition. It's not about cool things. That's our idea of big stuff. It's about greater things. It's about us being part of Jesus' mission to cause belief. And and causing belief are the things that lead to people accepting Jesus, the things that lead to people not dealing with hurt or pain, all these things that we attach to Jesus. It happens because he's asked us to be part of this. It's simply, I need you to be the continuation of who I am. I need you to be the example of what happens when God invades this world and invades this space. So we think about the things that Jesus does that cause belief. And if Jesus really is who he says he is, and if we really are who Jesus says we are, then we will be doing the things to cause belief. Because we will be participating with him, listening intently to the story of the Holy Spirit, asking us where to go. For ages, people asked me, why Foundry, a church that tends to be closer to Monroe than it is Sterlington, why we feel so passionate about Sterlington? Why do we feel God's calling us to the north part of this parish? And for the longest time I said, I don't know, but God will tell us when the time comes. I fervently believe that what I shared with you earlier about the ministry of feeding in the north part of this parish, I believe one of the reasons that Jesus has placed us here in this community is for that reason. Like that's just one of the reasons that I know why God has asked us to move even deeper into Sterlington. Because he's asked us to fulfill this with him in a way that only we can, that we have the ability to do. When we are participating with Jesus, we're also doing the things that he does. That we're learning to ask questions about what is it like if Jesus is here? What needs will be fixed? What issues will be addressed? What specific hurts and pains that people deal with will be comforted in a specific way that makes sense to them? These are the things that he asks us to do with him. In essence, what this just is just divine delegation. This is Jesus saying, hey, listen, if you'll trust me, I'm going to reveal a bunch of things to you that will provide a much bigger life than you would be available or aware of on your own. It's just divine delegation. And really, if you think about it that way, it's just discipleship. It's us being willing to listen to Jesus. And it's us assuming that he's going to put people in our lives that it's our responsibility to pour into. And then those people will begin to realize there are people that their responsibility is to pour into. And those people will realize that their responsibility is to find people. Do you see how this cycle goes? This is just us doing what Jesus did, and Jesus just doing simply what his Father was doing. That's the greater thing. It's not magic. is just simply living life fully aware and fully in the presence of Christ while we are fully aware and fully present in the communities that he has placed us in. So what happens if we let Jesus delegate into our life? It's really been the bigger picture conversations these last 3 weeks. We'll surrender to him eventually, hopefully. We'll realize that there's something bigger out there he's asking us to, and we'll be willing to say, I'm going to live into that instead of living into my own world. When we understand surrender, then sooner or later we kind of realize that we sometimes have to sacrifice to get to that place. And in conversations I've had with people these last couple of weeks about what sacrifice looks like, we've realized is more and more, it's like, what do I have that I'm willing to leverage to see something great happen? It's not this idea of I'm going to give something up and not have something and be frustrated, and then Jesus will reward me giving something up. It's so what resources do I have that I'm willing to leverage for the sake of something that's much bigger than me? What do I have I'm willing to leverage for the sake of the kingdom and for the sake of those around me? It's a lifestyle that leads us to a life of choosing to live in God's vision for this world rather than our vision for this world. And the last stage of this delegation is just being willing to commit to it. Being willing to say, I've surrendered, I've processed that, I've understand sacrifice now, and now I'm willing to put all these things into action. I'm willing to commit to something. I'm not going to try to make you fit into my idea of what I need, but I'm willing to live deeper into what you have given, what you have told, what you have shared, and what you have offered to me. Because here's the thing, when we try to constrict Jesus into our world, when we try to constrict Jesus into our conception of what this looks like, of what faith, what religion, of what worship, when we try to push Jesus into this, we don't get even greater things. We get even jankier things. We all have those stories of what happens when we try to do that. But this project that we're doing as a church is us stepping out in faith. It's us, we've gone through these practices of surrender of years ago, saying, hey, we know you're going to reveal this to us, so we're just going to follow you until we understand it. And then sacrifice, what does it look like for us to really weigh the cost to follow this mission? And we've been in meetings before where people told us, if y'all move 2 miles further away from Monroe, it's going to be catastrophic. We started making phone calls to everybody who lives far away from here and found out the exact opposite. Or what does it mean for y'all to, all this very different style. I've said before that whenever Foundry does things the way that people who are smarter than us tell us to do things, the way that the experts say, well, this is how a new church should act, whenever we do all the right things, we typically fall flat on our face. If you've been around Foundry for a while, you can start making a list of the examples of the times we've done that. But what we've learned over the years is whenever we do things that people tell us we're absolutely nuts and crazy for pursuing, like, now that will never work. That's when this church has been able to do even greater things. So we've weighed the cost, we've weighed what the sacrifice is, and today we're committing into this vision of being this particular people for God in this place. This project is about us becoming more faithful and all of us preparing for Jesus to do even greater things in our lives personally, but also in the lives of us as a church. I don't know if you know this or not, but we're still waiting to dry out enough to build a parking lot to move to St. Andrews. I feel like a broken record. I've made jokes about I'm praying like an Indian weather shaman right now for no rain. But let me tell you this. Unless things have drastically changed, when we move 2 miles into the corporate limits of Sterlington, we will be the largest church in Sterlington. With that comes responsibilities. With that comes expectations. With that comes the fact that we need to listen even more and follow even more. And we need to mission even more, because the responsibility comes with that. This is about us coming to Jesus and saying, hey, we're ready for more. And we know you have it for us. So we feel called to stretch ourselves in this manner for a few reasons. Number one, we believe it's time, and we're asking for Jesus to expand our ministry, our influence. There's the mission side of that, there's the relational side of that right now, but there's also the fact that our kids we can't hold any more kids back in Foundry Kids in the halls. We simply cannot have any more kids back there. That's a third of our congregation. For all the big people that are here in this room, how would you feel if there was no room for you and we didn't do anything about it? Would you feel like you mattered that much to us if that was the case? Like, we just can't hold any more back there, and they keep coming. We believe Jesus is asking us to expand our ministry. Second thing is we believe Jesus has placed us in a particular place and has given us specific ministry. That story of Jesus is big enough is much bigger than a zip code or a neighborhood. But we believe that there's a particular place he's asked us to live that out in primarily. For us to learn, for us to engage, and for us to bring that home and take that in other places. But the third thing is we believe that this is the next step to continue this vision and mission. Our space of dreams years ago has now become our normal. And we believe this is the time now for us to start dreaming bigger dreams about even greater ministry, and for us to work towards that becoming our normal. Our new sanctuary is simply a tool. It's a tool to reach more people and to send ourselves out into mission. We're a Sunday morning church. We've learned that over the last 3.5 years. It's one of the places they say new churches do not make good Sunday morning churches. Well, every time we try to not be a Sunday morning church, it hasn't worked very well. But when we live into our reality of us being a Sunday morning church, is where the first place we meet new people. That's the best place we engage people to send them out in ministry. That's the best place that we have the ability to form. That's the best place for us to leverage our influence. This building is a tool for us to increase the vision and mission that we believe Jesus has given us. So as people and as a church, Jesus has given us a tangible example of how we live into our value of God's vision for this world is bigger than our vision for this world. He says, right, because I'm going to my Father. I have shown you what this new world looks like. And now I'm asking you to simply step into the place that I've been showing you. Jesus has given us a tangible example of how we live into this value of God's vision for the world is bigger than our vision for this world. We're acting that out with our above and beyond sacrificial giving towards this campaign, towards this new building. That's one of the tangible expressions we have of saying, hey, we're willing to step out, take a step further, take a step deeper. We're willing to do that. Jesus doesn't ask us to change who we are when we begin to follow him. When we as individuals go to that pattern of surrender and of sacrifice and commitment, Jesus does not ask us to change who we are. He simply asks us to be the person that he made us to be. And the beautiful, most amazing thing about it, he's just asking us to expand our definition of who we are. And if we were willing to do that for him, he's willing to do it for us. If we want to see more of who Jesus is, it means that we just offer more of ourselves to what he is doing. That's how Jesus is big enough. And that's how we always have a bigger vision of who he is for us.